He told the judge I'd been unreachable. 84 phone calls, 3 months, not one reply. And when I finally fired him, he still refused to stop representing me until the day I walked into court and the judge looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. That's when I realized my own lawyer wasn't just incompetent. He was actively sabotaging me, and I was about to burn his entire operation to the ground. If you've ever been ignored, disrespected, or treated like your time and sanity don't matter, hit that subscribe button, like this video, drop a comment, and get ready. Because this isn't just justice. This is what happens when a lawyer thinks his client is powerless and learns the hard way that I wasn't. I never thought I'd end up in a legal nightmare because of the person who was supposed to help me escape one. But a few years ago, I hired a lawyer. Let's call him Richard. And from the very first phone call, something in my gut whispered, "This man doesn't care about you." At the time, I pushed that thought aside. I was stressed, exhausted, and desperately needed legal representation for a civil case that had already taken a toll on me. The firm seemed reputable. Their office was sleek and modern. The receptionist smiled like everything was perfect. But the rot always hides beneath the marble floors and fake professionalism. The first month went smoothly enough. We had an introductory meeting. He promised strategy, deadlines, filings. He sounded confident, maybe too confident in that practiced, rehearsed way lawyers sometimes have. And then, silence. Not just a day, not just a week, but months. At first, I assumed he was busy. I told myself, "You're not his only client. Be patient." But patience has a way of turning into self-doubt. Self-doubt becomes anxiety, and anxiety becomes full-blown alarm bells. I left voicemails, polite ones at first, then urgent ones. Emails, follow-ups, nothing. 3 months passed. I counted the calls one night because I couldn't sleep. 84 calls. 0 responses. Every time my phone lit up, I hoped it was him. Every time it wasn't, my frustration grew like a blister ready to burst. Then the court notices started coming. Notices about missed deadlines. Notices about filings that were late. Notices warning that my entire case, something that deeply mattered to me, might be dismissed due to lack of action. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, that letter in my shaking hand, thinking, is my lawyer trying to get my case thrown out, or does he just not care whether I lose everything? The worst part was the shame, the feeling of being powerless, of being told to trust the process, even when the process was run by people who couldn't care less about me. Finally, after another ignored week, I snapped. I drove to his office, no appointment, no warning. When the receptionist saw me, her smile froze mid-sentence. She told me Richard was in a meeting and would get back to me as soon as possible. I leaned forward, lowered my voice, and said, "Tell him I'm firing him. Today. Now. I want my file. I'm done." She stammered, made a quick call, and told me to wait. And wait. And wait. 30 minutes passed before Richard swaggered out from the back. He looked at me like I was an inconvenience at a DMV counter, not a client whose trust he had shredded. He gave me this smirking little shrug and said, "Listen, we've been trying to reach you. You've been hard to get a hold of." That was the moment something in me cracked clean in half. I felt my pulse in my teeth, my fists clenched so tight my nails left crescents in my palms. I spoke slowly, because if I didn't, I would have screamed. "You received 84 phone calls from me. Stop lying." He opened his mouth to protest, but I held up the call log on my phone, page after page after page. His eyes flickered, just for a moment. Then the arrogance slid back into place. "Well, regardless," he said, waving a hand like he was swatting away a fly, "you can't fire me right now. It'll delay the case. The courts may not approve the withdrawal." That wasn't true. I didn't know it then, but I sure as hell would learn it later. I told him again, "You're fired." And he ignored me, like I hadn't even spoken. He literally continued operating as my lawyer, filing documents with his name on my case, showing up as my representative, and speaking on my behalf in communications I never saw. I had to go to the court to force him to withdraw, and that's where the story takes a turn I never expected. Because on the day he finally told me I had to appear before a judge to approve the withdrawal, I entered the courtroom nervous, heart pounding, hands sweating, feeling like I was walking into some legal maze I didn't understand. The judge, an older man with gentle eyes, looked confused the moment I stepped forward. He shifted his glasses and asked, "What are you doing here?" "My lawyer told me I needed to be here, Your Honor, for the motion to withdraw." He blinked once, twice. Then he leaned back in his chair and let out the softest, most bewildered chuckle. "Sir," he said, shaking his head, "these motions are submitted electronically. You don't need to be here. I have no idea why your attorney would tell you that, unless he was just trying to be a dick." Hearing a judge say that flat out, without hesitation, was surreal, and it lit a fire under me so hot it felt electric. That was the moment the powers shifted, the moment I realized I wasn't crazy, I wasn't overreacting, I wasn't being difficult. I had been lied to, manipulated, sabotaged, and he had done it because he thought I wouldn't fight back. He thought I was small. He thought wrong. When the court officially forced him to withdraw, I went home and started writing. I didn't stop for hours. What I created wasn't a complaint. It was a 10-page autopsy of a corrupt legal practice. I detailed every ignored call, every missed filing, every lie, every manipulation, every unethical action, not just from him, but from the entire office, because the more I looked, the more patterns I saw. I wrote about how they treated clients like disposable income streams, how they used lies as tools, how incompetence wasn't an accident, it was the culture. By the time I finished, my hands were cramped, my coffee was cold, and I felt like I had peeled back the skin on something rotten and exposed it to the sun. I sent the complaint to the Bar Association, and then I waited. Weeks passed. Then months. Every time I checked my mailbox, my stomach knotted, expecting a dismissive form letter telling me nothing would come of it. But one afternoon, I opened a thick envelope stamped with the bar's emblem, heavier than any letter I'd received before. Inside was a decision that made my knees go weak. The entire firm's 4 partners were being punished severely. The bar determined it wasn't just one bad lawyer. It was a firm-wide, encouraged pattern of unethical behavior. Their punishment? Disbarred for 5 years. Required restitution to wronged clients. And when their disbarment ends, they can only practice under supervision for another 5 years. 10 years of consequences, 10 years of oversight, 10 years where they could never again treat someone the way they treated me. My first reaction shocked me. I felt guilty. Like I'd dropped a nuke when a slap might have sufficed. But then the guilt faded, replaced with something colder, cleaner, sharper. Relief. Because I remembered the court notices piling up. I remembered the sleepless nights. I remembered being lied to, my face. I remembered showing up to a courtroom for no reason, embarrassed and confused, because my lawyer wanted to be a dick. This wasn't revenge. This was accountability. And accountability is the one thing people like that never expect. By the end of it all, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't trapped in a nightmare somebody else created. I was free. The day I read the bar's decision, I sat at my kitchen table in the same spot where I'd once shaken reading those court warnings. But this time, the shaking wasn't fear. It was a rush of vindication so pure it felt like my lungs expanded for the first time in months, maybe years. These people, legal professionals who thought they were untouchable, finally had to face consequences, real ones they couldn't dodge or lie their way out of. And I realized something. The justice system may be slow, it may be flawed, but it can still work when someone refuses to shut up and disappear. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. People in power count on you giving up. They expect you to accept disrespect because fighting back feels exhausting. But the moment you stand up, really stand up, even giants crumble. If you enjoyed the story of justice served ice cold, hit that like button, subscribe for more real revenge stories, and drop a comment. What's the worst experience you've ever had with someone who thought they were untouchable? Thanks for listening, and remember, silence helps them. Your voice stops them.